Joining me now, Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland. He's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Van Hollen, thank you for coming to the Sunday show. First, your reaction to Trump's NATO comments.
Well, Jonathan, it's great to be with you. You know, sometimes we think that Donald Trump no longer has the capacity to shock with his comments. But this was just outrageous for somebody who's running once again to be president of the United States to say that not only would he not come to defend one of our allies if they hadn't put in enough for their own defense, but that he would actively encourage Putin to attack one of our NATO allies. So this obviously will send shockwaves, not just to our NATO allies in Europe, but people around the world. And, you know, President Xi of China is keeping one eye on Ukraine as he keeps one eye on Taiwan. And so those folks who claim that they're, you know, tough on China, but if they're weak on Ukraine, it doesn't compute. Compute for Ukraine, doesn't compute anywhere in the world. So this is a shocking comment from somebody whose shocking comments we had sometimes gotten used to.
And we need to take him seriously. So, Senator, bring us up to speed on where things stand right now with the foreign aid package.
Well, the good news is it did clear another hurdle today. This is the bill that includes the desperately needed assistance for Ukraine. Passed 67 to 27. We have one more hurdle on the way to final passage that could come Monday evening, unless we somehow shorten that time period up. So the good news, Jonathan, is this bill seems on track to get out of the Senate with a big bipartisan vote and a lot of momentum.
So you heard Minority Leader Mitch McConnell's impassioned floor speech today, but is he leader in name only now? Isn't Donald Trump the one calling the shots for Republicans in both chambers?
Well, yes, he is. And you mentioned that earlier in terms of the border security issue. As you know, we came up with a bipartisan solution in the United States Senate. But as soon as Donald Trump said he was against it, because he wanted to save that issue for the election for political purposes rather than actually solve it. You saw the Speaker of the House first say he was going to vote against it, and then Republican senators followed. So on the Ukraine issue, I do think we have more Republican support, and that despite Donald Trump's recent comments, we still have a chance to get it over the finish line in the House when it gets over there.
All right, Senator, let's turn our attention to Israel. President Biden had a call with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning, and U.S. officials now say they're on the verge of a hostage deal. What more can you tell us about those negotiations?
Well, we've been working very actively, President Biden, to try to achieve a hostage deal. We should prioritize the return of the hostages. I've said we need a ceasefire and return of the hostages. So I don't know the exact details. I do know that earlier today, Prime Minister Netanyahu talked about the fact that he may launch an invasion of Rafah, which is a city in southern Gaza, which now has 1.3 million people. And I know President Biden has been urging Netanyahu not to take that action. It would take an awful situation and make it even more of a nightmare. So I hope that President Biden, is able to prevail on Netanyahu on that matter.
Well, on that point, Senator, listen to what residents said about the potential of that move on Rafah.
We've been hearing that they want to come to Rafah, just like every city in Gaza. And we're so scared, we don't know where to go.
We have to start our life again from zero. Me and my family started our life from zero like 4 times.
I mean, you said this is going to be a safe place. How many times did you lie to us about this place is being safe and then turning back and bombing us?
Senator, the White House readout of the call with Netanyahu notes that the president told the prime minister that he, and I'm quoting, should not proceed without a credible and executable plan for ensuring the safety and support for the more than 1 million people sheltering there. Would you support cutting off military aid to Israel if Netanyahu fails to do what the president asks?
Well, I do think that if, in this case, Prime Minister Netanyahu totally ignores the pleas from President Biden, that certainly the president needs to make it clear that U.S. military assistance does not come as a blank check. This is exactly why I proposed an amendment to the national security bill that we're on right now that will require that every country, including Netanyahu's government that gets U.S. military assistance, has to promise up front that they will comply with international humanitarian law and promise up front that they will cooperate with humanitarian deliveries of assistance. So I do think President Biden needs to be tougher with Prime Minister Netanyahu, not just on these phone calls in private, but in public. We need to make better use of our leverage here.
Well, I mean, do you agree that that's what the president did when he had that impromptu press conference Thursday night, when he said that the Israeli reaction in Gaza has been, quote, over the top? Should he be more blunt like that in public more frequently?
The answer is yes, Jonathan. I think the president needs to do that. I think these private requests have not borne the results that we need. We continue to see very high levels of civilian casualties. We continue to see obstruction from Netanyahu's government with respect to the delivery of desperately needed humanitarian assistance. I was just at that Rafah border crossing in Egypt with my colleague, Jeff Merkley, a number of weeks ago. And it was a desperate situation then. And any Israeli major offensive in Rafah would just create a total humanitarian meltdown and disaster. As those voices said, this was the place that innocent Palestinian civilians were told to go to be safe. And so the population of the city of Gaza has virtually tripled or quadrupled because it's got all these people crammed in a very small space. So I think the president needs to be very firm on this. And the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu went on national American TV today and said, well, he's going to do it anyway, should make President Biden even more determined to hold the line here.
Mm-hmm. Senator, we have less than a minute left, but you are the senator from Maryland, and I can't let you go without asking you about former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan just announcing he's running for a Senate seat in Maryland. And Maryland hasn't elected a Republican senator in 37 years. He was a very popular governor. Have Democrats' prospects of holding the majority dimmed with his entry into the race?
They've not dimmed. It will be a very tough and competitive race. But I'm quite confident Maryland will keep that long record of Democratic senators going to the Senate in this next election. And the reason I say that is that it's one thing to be a governor in the state of Maryland. It's another thing to represent Maryland in the United States Senate, especially when the Senate right now is at 50-50. And Larry Hogan winning a seat in Maryland means Mitch McConnell or Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley or all of those folks will be in the majority. They will control all the committee chairs. And so that is not something that Marylanders are going to want. I'm quite confident of that.
Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, thank you very much for coming to the Sunday Show.
Thank you.